right, so it is 12:01, so I want to be respectful of people's time. Thank you for joining us today. This is a busy time of the year, of the month, of the term, and so we appreciate that you took some time out today to come join us for our December FDI. Today, Stephanie Wannamaker is going to be presenting to us. Stephanie is the program director and the assistant professor for online Bachelor of Science of Psychology program here at ACU Dallas. She received her bachelor's degree in psychology at Texas Wesleyan University and a master's degree in psychology at California Baptist University. She's currently working toward her doctoral degree here at ACU in positive leadership. After years of online teaching and serving as a child and adolescent counselor and youth services director, she felt called to dive deeper into her work in higher education with the goal of enhancing the student experience. Stephanie has a passion for teaching and creating learning environments for students to thrive in their studies and also grow in their faith. And she's excited to be serving in her role here at ACU. Today, Stephanie will be asking for feedback periodically, so please feel free to participate either in the chat or by unmuting yourself. There will be some time for question and answers at the end, but if you have a very pressing question during the presentation, she said, feel free to ask it then, but we will reserve a little bit of time at the end. And so without taking any more of her time, I'm going to turn this over now to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and thank you so much for joining. So self-care, I know we've all heard a lot about it. We've probably may have some practices that we practice in, but specifically, I chose this topic because I'm a firm believer in the power of self-care. I have a background in psychology. As Kathy mentioned, I got my master's and my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I spent a lot of time counseling and doing all the therapeutic things. So I have a strong I guess, inkling to lean that way to practice self-care. Now, since it's around the holiday times, we're starting to think of, specific goals or resolutions for the new year. We have all tried to set those goals, myself included, but sometimes we miss the mark and we fail to keep them throughout the year. However, unlike resolutions, self-care is so important that we stick to. In our jobs, it can be quite stressful, and it's important to practice self-care so we can attend to our health and our well-being. Research has shown that people who participate in self-care have more fulfilled lives, and ultimately, that's the goal. We want to have lives that are fulfilled and happy, and a few themes will become prevalent throughout this presentation. Specifically that there is a correlation between strong or happy lives and our success and happiness within our careers. And ultimately, self-care plays a major role in that dynamic. So let's jump right in. So I know, like I said, many of you have heard of self-care, but I wanted to show you this spoof video about self-care because oftentimes when we think about it, it can seem daunting, and it adds a little enlightenment to it whenever you see something that's funny. So let's jump right into the video, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Oh man, I'm so glad we decided to get mani-pedis during our lunch hour.
Right? Practicing self-care is so important. I mean, sometimes I feel guilty about it, but I just am so much more productive if I take a little bit of time to do things that make me feel better.
Yeah, totally.
Just anything that'll get you through the day, you know? Goddesses? Last night, I was going to call my parents, but instead I watched 3 episodes of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Is that bad? No, that's just self-care. I mean, you just sometimes have to take a little bit of time to recharge yourself, right?
Angels, I have a confession.
Oh, I love confessions.
Yesterday for lunch, I was going to have a salad.
Oh, I love salad.
But I ate 13 glazed donuts instead.
Yum.
Was that naughty?
Did that make your soul feel better?
It did.
Well, everybody knows that soul health is so much more important than body health. Like, that is self-care 101.
Okay, phew.
You know, a thing that I've really been into recently is that I cut my work hours down from 40 hours a week to like 0. Does that make me an awful person? No, that is so self-caring.
It's not lazy if you need it.
I need it. And I feel so much better now. And I just like basically get the same amount of work done.
So I'm not advocating to cut your work down to 0, but I do want you guys to incorporate some strategies, maybe taking a full lunch instead of meeting during that time, just so you are getting those self-care strategies in. And self-care doesn't have to be a burden in our routines. It could be something super simple, but do not take it overboard like these ladies in the video. So with that being said, let's jump into what self-care is. And each and every person describes or defines self-care in a different way. But I want you to think logically about what does it mean to you and how do you define it? So the definition of self-care is, taking care of yourself so that you can be healthy, you can be well, you can ultimately do your job, and you can help and care for others. And essentially, the plan for self-care is so that you are able to accomplish all the things that you need to get done throughout the day. Now, I fully recognize that each person lives a busy life full of obligations and things that they need to do, but I want to stress how important it is for you to take time for yourself. So what does taking time for yourself look like? I know we all have heard the travel safety announcement when it comes to putting that oxygen mask on yourself before your children or others. And that's exactly what self-care is. It's a reminder to put ourselves first. We work in careers that are so fast-paced at times, and we take for granted the fact that we need to take these time for ourselves. So the reminder for you is take that time, take it so that you are able to have that healthy well-being. And also another reminder is that putting others before ourselves is not self-care. I know some of you may have goals and resolutions to be more giving and more lend your time more, but at the same time, that is an important goal, but self-care is more along the lines of taking care of yourselves. Oftentimes we give, the people in our lives time, our love, our energy. We lend them a shoulder to cry on. We lend them an ear to talk to. And yet when it comes to ourselves and our own journey to wellness, we take shortcuts, we skip steps. So it's important that we are taking the time that we need and not dismissing our own feelings and problems, because that ultimately can wreak havoc in our lives. So that is so much why it is important to be self-caring. So one key that I hope you all take from this presentation is to treat yourself the way you would want to treat your best friend. And that will ultimately ensure that you are treating yourself and attending to the needs that you have set. So now that we've talked a little bit about what self-care is, I want to talk about why it's important. So there's many aspects that make self-care so important. The first, self-care is how we cope with our daily stressors in our lives, right? So coping mechanisms specifically help us through difficult times. They help us to manage stress and anxiety, which can get in the way of our happiness. Self-care is also it contributes to our mental and emotional frame of mind. It plays a crucial role in the quality of our life and ultimately your work. There's a reason why there's so much research on job satisfaction and quality of life in the workplace, because it ultimately matters. The strong correlation between job satisfaction and life satisfaction is increased when self-care is implemented in our daily lives. Now, I know other factors can contribute to unhappiness in our careers, but that's out of our control. Self-care is something that we do have control of in our lives. Self-care also includes everything related to staying physically healthy. And that includes hygiene routines, exercise, nutrition, and even seeking medical care when needed. There's a reason why, it's just so important that we are exercising and eating right and eating healthy. These are all steps that help us to manage our stressors in our life. And it helps us to take care of ourselves, improve our health and our own well-being. Personally, for me, exercise and my nighttime routine are non-negotiables when it comes to my self-care practices. It's part of my self-care plan, and I know some of you all may have some of those self-care plans as well. But having those non-negotiables in our lives is what helps set the tone to maintain our self-care strategies throughout the year. Self-care is also something that requires us to check in with ourselves and ask ourselves how we're doing and what our body is asking for. Within our careers, sometimes, like I said, we can take for granted of checking in with ourselves. So creating a time where you are checking with yourself and being in tune with what you're needing, whether that's sleep, whether that's food, whether that's exercise, time off. These are things that you need to be able to do to maintain a healthy well-being and happiness within your life. And lastly, self-care is when it's regularly practiced, the benefits are broad and have been linked to positive health outcomes. So health outcomes included reduced stress, improved immune system function, increased productivity, higher self-esteem, and ultimately living a longer life. So let's jump to the next slide. I do want to pause here. Is there any questions or anything? Anybody have any questions? Okay, I will keep going. So, of course, I want to link in some research that is linked to self-care and living a happier, longer life. So within the past recent years, there's been a huge push to live longer and more healthier, fulfilled lives. And that ultimately starts with self-care in so many ways. We talked about why self-care is important. We talked about what self-care is to you specifically. And this is just a continuation of that, having it being backed by research. So exercise. People who exercise between 2 to 8 hours per year, or 2 to 8 hours per week, have improved the quality of their life by reducing the risks of health issues. So for example, going for a 10-minute walk in the morning or being committed to 10 push-ups a day can make a drastic difference. Earlier in the year, Kathy Carroll presented a few things to get fit. These are some strategies that you can incorporate with your exercise routine and ultimately getting your self-care strategy up and running. The next area would be to find purpose. Research shows that people who have strong life purposes were associated with decreased anxiety and stress levels that can contribute to a healthier and happier life. So maybe that looks like for you connecting spiritually with God, reading daily devotionals, Bible study, or even mission trips with your church when you have time. So getting involved and growing in our relationships with our friends, our family, and ultimately God. Another area that research suggests links to a happier, longer life is diet. Eating a diet filled with fruits and vegetables per day is associated with lower risk of serious health issues and mortality, especially when it comes to heart-related issues. Now, during the holidays, I know that this is a difficult time for us to maintain our eating habits, but everything in moderation and you will be just fine. I know for sure I will be eating a great Christmas dinner, and I know you all will be as well. So the next area would be sleep. Research shows that too little sleep, less than 7 hours per night, was linked with higher stress and anxiety rates. Lack of sleep just is shown to decrease the quality of life. However, sleeping more than 10 hours per night has also been linked with decreased lower levels of or higher stress and anxiety. So don't underdo it and don't overdo it when it comes to sleep. Lastly, getting outside. Spending some time in an open space is associated with improved health outcomes. Getting some fresh air is essential to our well-being. As humans, we're outdoor beings and it's inside of our DNA. So the research that is backed by science about getting outside is paramount, because we are needing that extra fresh air and space. And we've been cooped up a lot of times in our offices and not going outside. So be sure to get your fresh air and get outside, whether it's just 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. If you're out drinking a cup of coffee, or if you're out on your walk, that would be helpful in maintaining that self-care strategy for sure. Now, so I know that we've talked about why self-care is important. We've talked a little bit about what self-care is. Let's speak to some of the factors that may get in the way of our self-care strategies. As we're on the heels of Thanksgiving and heading into Christmas and New Year's, anxiety can start to boil up. One key factor to maintain self-care strategies is to recognize when anxiety and stress triggers are developing. So if you can, raise your hand if you are starting to feel any stress or anxiousness during the holidays. Yeah, I see some head nods. I see some hands. Yeah, so during this time, it can be a lot of stress and anxiety. Specifically for me personally, I'm a people pleaser. And during this time, I am so stressed and anxious when it comes to getting the perfect gift or creating the perfect menu for Christmas or anything like that. So that stress and anxiety starts to build up. So I really rely on self-care strategies to lower that stress and anxiety, specifically during this time of year. We do have some things in the chat. So yes. Okay, perfect. So yes, during these times, it's very stressful for a lot of people. And I want you to think into your mind too, as well as times throughout the year, maybe when it's not a holiday, where you may have stress and anxiety. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So recognizing that you have stress and anxiety is important to our self-care strategies, because you need to recognize and know, what does stress and anxiety look like for you? Symptoms manifest differently for each person. So whenever we are going through these stressful situations, what are some symptoms that you may experience, or things that may come up? And you are free to either speak that out loud or voice them in the chat. But I want to hear some symptoms or behaviors that you all exhibit whenever you are feeling stressed and anxious. I'll give you a couple minutes.
Frustration.
Yep.
Somebody said scatterbrained in the chat.
Okay.
Insomnia, increased heart rate,
Great.
apathy.
Yeah, these are all symptoms and behaviors that may manifest when we are feeling stressed or anxious. This step is so important to ensure that we're implementing self-care strategies, because when you are feeling anxious and stressed, recognizing those symptoms is the sure way to prevent them from occurring in the future. So whenever you have your self-care strategies, if you're feeling like you are getting tired or frustrated or fatigued, you can ultimately bring in your self-care strategy to say, okay, let's combat this stress and anxiety with these strategies that I know for sure will help me to be calm and relaxed. Let's see. If you aren't sure how stress and anxiety is presenting for you, you can definitely ask your friends or family, because they will ultimately tell you what symptoms you have. My husband knows for sure that I start to get a little snappy with him. So he knows that I'm feeling stressed and anxious. So if you are struggling with recognizing these stress triggers, reach out to them and they will definitely tell you. Or you can also develop a thought journal, or track your behaviors whenever you start to exhibit stress and anxiety. So that will paint the clear picture for you of how to respond to how you respond specifically to stress. Now, I tell you all this to say, like I said, finding out those stress triggers is important for your self-care strategies. So what do you do specifically to manage or control your stress or your anxiety? Do you have any specific self-care strategies that you implement? And we talked about how stress manifested, but I'm curious to see in the chat, or if share with everyone what are some helpful strategies that you practice on a daily basis or weekly basis, or even monthly that help you to maintain your stress and anxiety?
Watching their diet, drinking a
Mhm.
lot of tea,
Okay.
getting out in the middle of the day and taking a walk,
Okay.
acknowledging that you need help, asking for help, exercise, unplug from work unplug from the stressor.
Great. Thank you all for sharing those. Those are great. So let's jump right into self-care strategies and categories. So I like to break up self-care into 3 separate categories. And you talked about what you guys do for self-care strategies. So think back and see which category would your self-care practice fall in. And ultimately, one doesn't outweigh the other. And you can have only emotional self-care strategies. You can have only physical self-care strategies. You don't necessarily have to have them all, but being within one of these categories will help you to keep your strategies throughout the year. So emotional self-care. These are things that speak to our emotional well-being, such as self-talk, weekly bubble baths, saying no to things that cause unnecessary stress, giving yourself permission to take a pause, or even setting up a weekly coffee date with a friend. These emotional self-care strategies speak to our emotions and our emotional well-being. The next avenue is physical self-care, and we talked a little bit about that with exercise. These are practices that speak to our physical well-being, such as prioritizing sleep, adapting an exercise routine you can stick with, and choosing healthy and nourishing foods instead of overly highly processed ones. This is an important one for our health and overall our well-being as well. And then lastly, you have your spiritual self-care. And these are strategies, of course, that speak to our spiritual well-being, such as attending a religious service, spending time in nature, meditating, incorporating regular acts of kindness into your day, and keeping a gratitude journal, for example. So these are all things that you can incorporate in your self-care strategy if you don't have one, or if you already have a strategy and you find one of these helpful to help you maintain your self-care strategy. So we talked a lot about what self-care is, why it's important, a couple of strategies. Now, the whole plan of this presentation was to make sure that we are sticking to our self-care strategies, right? So there's a couple of things that you should do to maintain your self-care routine. The first one is strategize. It's so important to have a strategy and a plan for your self-care strategy or strategies that you plan to implement in your lives. So determine which activities bring you joy, replenish your energy, and restore your balance. So if that's exercise, create an exercise plan and strategize about, okay, I'm going to work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If that's eating healthily, if you want to count your calories, you can do that. So strategizing how you're going to implement your plan is essential to keeping that plan throughout the year. Also, setting specific goals. And this is something that starting small can help you to maintain that strategy throughout the year as well. And choosing one specific behavior you would like to incorporate into your routine throughout the next week. So if you would want to start doing affirmations, I do 3 affirmations per night. I essentially started with the one, but I just do 3 affirmations about something positive that I encountered that day, or something positive about myself, just so I am going to sleep on those thoughts and waking up with those thoughts in my mind. So starting off small and being real strategic about that is helpful to keep track of your self-care strategies throughout the year. Also, practice. So building up practicing those behaviors every single day for 1 week. Research shows that it takes 30 days to create a habit. So if you start January 1, if you are going to be doing positive affirmation. So if you start with 1 positive affirmation every night before you go to bed, or in the morning when you wake up, that can be helpful into creating a plan throughout the month. And you'll be ultimately be able to keep that strategy throughout the year. So like I said, 30 days is all it takes to create a routine. Next is self-reflection. After you've practiced your strategies and created a strategy and have these specific goals and you practice them, I want you to be able to reflect on how you feel about those changes that you've made. If you feel better about the routine that you have, keep it up. If you feel like things aren't working out, then you can make a change. That self-reflection is so important because it helps you to recognize that this isn't working, so let's change it up and do something different. Next area of focus would be to incorporate more practices. So if you are one of those people that is doing a great job with their self-care strategies and they're maintaining it, and you've met that 30-day mark, let's add additional practices whenever you are ready. So if you go through all of January and February comes and you say, okay, I did one positive affirmation every single day for this month, let's add 2. And just build on those. Having that building block helps you to maintain your strategies, and ultimately you can build on what you have been practicing. And then lastly is get some support. You can get support through sharing practices from a loved one, a coach, a licensed professional, or even through your healthcare or community or workplace. Also finding an accountability partner. Previous years, that was a major thing. Whenever people would work out, having someone to work out with them or keep them on track with their diet, or even share, there's multiple apps of My Fitness Plan. You can share your fitness goals and things like that to help you stay on track and get the support that you need through your loved ones, your friends, your community. And that will be helpful to help you stay on track within the new year. All right, so the main thing that I wanted to talk about too as well is keep it simple. Practicing self-care doesn't have to be a heavy lift right out the gate. And I think some people find it daunting and overbearing, but it doesn't have to be that way. You should just keep it simple. The first step into to keep it simple and make sure that you are maintaining these self-care strategies throughout the year is to be kind to yourself. Give yourself some grace. I think that it's so easy to be self-critical, but once you have your strategies and your plan, make sure that you are, keeping those strategies up and plan throughout the week or the month. But ultimately, if you do, say for instance, if you have a plan to not eat any sugar, if you slip up and have sugar, it's okay. Give yourself some grace, because that one error in your plan isn't going to deter you from getting your ultimate goals reached. The next area would be to take dedicated breaks from electronics. This is a major thing, and I talked a little bit about this in the previous slides about taking maybe dedicated time for your lunch. I know we're busy, we have a lot of meetings, and sometimes we have to meet during lunchtime, specifically this meeting. But if you can, take some time that is for you. Maybe that's, eating your lunch without a meeting, or in between meetings, getting some time to go outside and get some fresh air, drinking your tea, taking those times away from electronics, setting a timer on your phone for social media. Last year, that was one of my specific goals of having a specific timer for social media. So I'm not spending more time on social media than I need to. Putting your phone on airplane mode for an hour or half an hour throughout the day and just attending to your mental health and your well-being. Set time or lunch times with your friends and family, whether you want to go out for lunch. Just taking that time away from electronics and our computers is essential for us to maintain our self-care strategies. Another thing would be to live in the present moment. Enjoy your life and see the positive in any situation. When you can, get some time off and spend your life living it and living in the present moment. Another area of focus would be to start a gratitude journal or positive affirmations. And I talked a little bit about that as well. 3 positive affirmations are 3 things about yourself, are things about your day that you reflect on and what you're grateful for each night. I think over the Christmas and Thanksgiving breaks, it's so easy to be grateful and thankful for things, but and things and people in our lives. But it's important to keep that throughout the year. And I know I've been guilty of that as well, as focusing just on Thanksgiving and Christmas for being thankful and grateful. But incorporating that through January to December is helpful to maintain those self-care strategies and be thankful and grateful in our lives. Also, taking deep breaths for 5 minutes to start the day. And this is a big one. I think that specifically when we get up, we are so stuck in our routines, whether that's reaching for our phones or turning the TV on to watch the news. Before you reach for your phone or turn on the TV, take a little bit of the day. Start your day by paying attention to your breath. Do some deep breathing, setting your intentions for the day. Maybe that's through prayer or read your daily devotionals, things like that. Take the time before you jumpstart into your day. That can create less stress and anxiety in your life because you are taking that moment before you jump right into it throughout the day. Putting some time into creating a plan. Putting that time into creating a plan and sticking to it. For example, if you want to go to bed by 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m., start that plan for you, that strategy for yourself, and stick to it. Then avoid roadblocks before they happen. So this part, we talked about those stressors and those triggers, right? So these are areas that we know can cause kinks in our self-care strategies. So being able to recognize that stress and anxiety building up and implementing our self-care strategies to stop it before they put an end to our self-care practices. And then lastly, connect with your friends and family. So call a friend just to say hello, take up a relaxing hobby that you can share with a friend or family member, and ultimately build memories. These are simple strategies that you can take to implement your self-care strategies. And all right, that is all I have. Do you have any questions? Did I miss anything in the chat? I'm not sure what my time is right now.
We're at 12:33 right now.
Perfect.
Stephanie, can you give some examples of self-affirmations?
Oh, sure. So self-affirmations would look like, I did a great job getting all my tasks done for the day. I did a great job of making sure that I cleaned up the kitchen like I said I was. Or even I was positive today. I had a happy mood today. These are things that you can have for yourself, and they're specific to you, specific things that you would like to work on or things that you have set for the day. Does that make sense or provide any clarity?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have other
Anybody?
questions. All right, from the chat, when I fall short or don't meet my goals, how do you combat shame, which can make it even harder to try again?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about that. Offer yourself some grace. And I know it's so hard to, whenever you are feeling guilty or you feel shame, to follow that up. So create a strategy that is effective for you to get back into your routine and to minimize the shame and the anxiety that you may feel from not meeting those strategies. So say, for example, if you had a goal and you missed the mark, take a day to just refresh, do something that you enjoy, or eat something that you really enjoy, to just get yourself back centered and focus on what you can do to maintain your strategy next. But like I said, ultimately offer yourself some grace and be kind to yourself. We are human, we'll fall short. So just focusing on the positives of what happened instead of the negative. Does that help?
She says yes.
Great.
Megan asked, any advice on best ways to create obtainable New Year's resolutions?
Be specific. So if your goal is my goal specifically is to lose 15 pounds, my baby weight. So what I'm planning to do is try to set a small goal, maybe 1 pound every 1 or 2 weeks, and try to start from there. Because if you start with a huge goal, it's not going to be something that you can attain. So start small and work your way up from there. And then ultimately create a strategy and plan for those goals.
Stephanie, you had mentioned emotional self-care, physical self-care, spiritual.
Mhm.
Do you consider one of those more important than the other? If we're not to the point of doing all three, do you have a suggestion on where to start with those or which one to start with?
So one doesn't outweigh the other. I think that for you personally, it's important for you to find which area you would like to focus on more, whether that's emotional, spiritual, or physical, and what works best for you. I know for me, physical self-care works the best for me. But that may be different from somebody else. They may lean more toward emotional self-care or spiritual self-care. So find whatever works for you and stick to it. And you can always try different things from each category and see what works and stick to the one that you resonate with.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else before we wrap up here? Dr. Glenn is thanking you for walking us through this topic.
Thank you. I hope you all found some great strategies, and I hope you can stick to your self-care strategies throughout this year.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Very appropriate timing on this. As I mentioned at the start of this presentation, it's a stressful time of the year. So this is very good information and things to be thinking about and to take care of ourselves. I really like that thing you said right at the first, that treat yourself like you would your best friend. That's for me a great takeaway. So thank you for that, this important information. As we finish up here, thank you for your attendance this year and your participation. Greatly appreciated. FDI committee continues to meet and we're planning out for next year. We'll have a preview of that soon. The format will be the same. We won't be doing one monthly. We'll be doing one each term. There'll be more about that. But we continue to meet and evaluate what's happened. And so we greatly appreciate everybody's attendance and participation. We want to make this useful for everyone. So certainly feel free to reach out if you have thoughts or comments on things. And so we'll preview soon what's coming for the next calendar year. All right, and I think with all of that, we are going to dismiss for today. Give you a few minutes of your lunch break back. And thank you all for your participation.